Welcome back to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Ortega from Red Bluff PD in California, 28 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Ortega. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paige. It's an honor, and I appreciate you reaching out and talking about wellness in our first responder world. I think it's absolutely important for what we do today in today's society. So, the things that you do and the work that you are doing for all of us, we appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I was hoping that we could start from the very beginning. You actually have a really interesting background in how you got started in law enforcement. So can you like rewind 28 years, maybe even before 28 years, and tell me how you got started?
As I was a younger man, I was looking for direction, going through college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And I happened to come across a job announcement for a part-time position in the local law enforcement agency here in Red Bluff. It was a part-time position, and I called the number. They invited me over, and I started as a community service officer, which is a non-sworn position. And essentially, it was parking enforcement and animal calls, which is what I was doing at the time. A little bit of evidence processing, but I worked my way up from a part-time employee, got a full-time position about 4 months later. So since 1997, I've been in this profession, working my way up, and then finally was able to achieve chief of police in the same agency that I started with. So I'm very excited and happy that I was able to start from the bottom, from the ground up, and work my way up to this position in this agency. And just to be a person in this community who has seen it over the years change and trying to affect that change in a positive way.
Yeah, no, I love that story, that idea of like starting from the bottom, working your way up, and having pride in that. Do you think that having the various roles and assignments throughout your career influence the way that you lead today? Do you think that that benefited you to have different perspectives?
Absolutely. I don't think anybody who can start in a career and have the ups and the downs, different influences by means of different employers or different bosses or different um, takes on leadership and how people process information. It definitely has an influence on you and how it shapes your career and how you treat others. And when we talk about wellness, we all had someone who maybe wasn't the greatest boss, and we've all had people who we thought were very important for our career and had a positive influence. So I would like to think that we try to mimic the ones that we thought were positive for us, and we try to emulate some of that so we can carry on that tradition and treat people very well to make sure that they're happy and successful in their positions.
I agree with you. And I would almost argue that I've learned more from people who maybe weren't the best than I did from people who were great, even though I did learn from some really great, I had really great mentors in my life. I was lucky to have that. But I feel like you can learn from everybody, and it doesn't matter if they are a formal or informal leader or someone in your life outside of work. I think that if you can have that mentality of like, I can learn from everybody, it's only going to improve your development over time.
And that's absolutely true. We learn from all failures. And yeah, I don't think you can be successful in any career unless you've had setbacks. And it's how you recover from those setbacks really that determines how successful you're going to be in the future.
Do you think that that is the definition of resilience?
I think it's definitely part of that definition. It's, resiliency can look very different depending on who the person is and what those setbacks are. So,
Mm.
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. One of the things that you talked to me about, and this was in the context of one of the things that you're most proud of, is you said your family. And I was hoping you could maybe share the dynamics of your family.
I'm very proud of my family and our family network or the tradition that we've started with me. So I'm been in law enforcement for 28 years. My wife is also an officer. She's in a neighboring city and she's been in law enforcement for over 20 years. My oldest son is in the neighboring county He's a sheriff's deputy. My middle son is a police officer here in Red Bluff with me. And I have twin boys that are in the Air Force. They are security forces and they're currently stationed in Florida. And then I finally have my little girl. She's 13. So I joke with her and tell her that she doesn't really have an option. It's either going to be law enforcement or military for her as a career. So it's, I'm extremely proud of our service and how we've grown as a family and the decisions that we've made in this profession, because I think it's important for us to be part of our community, do the very best that we can to make society better.
Is your daughter on board with that, or is she pushing back a little bit?
She's pushing back a little bit now. She was into it for a little while, but when I tell her that she doesn't have a choice, then she pushes back quite a bit on that. But
Good.
she right now she wants to be a teacher or a lawyer, so we'll see how that changes as she matures.
Yeah. I thought that right away. I was like, I could see like teenage girl being told that you have to do something to just like want to do the complete opposite of that. It's almost like reverse psychology at this point, but
And the differences between boys and girls raising them, because I think I had it pretty easy raising four boys, and then the little girl comes, and they're just obviously girls are completely different than boys, but she has such a great heart and she cares for everybody that she comes in contact with. So it means a lot for me for to see her grow as opposed to how the boys were raised as well.
I love that. Was there anything, so we talk about kind of legacy, and you said you're really proud of um, kind of this generational thing that you've created within your family. And was there anything that was taught to you by a mentor or someone that was influential in your life that you have now passed on to your sons?
Probably the biggest thing is anything worth having is worth working for. It's the work ethic and the drive to make sure that you succeed in life. As we know, there's many setbacks because life is hard, but your outlook and how you can prepare to be successful when that moment comes, I think is the most important. So for all of our kids, we try to teach that work ethic, and it's okay to have setbacks and it's okay to have failures. It's how you carry yourself after that failure and what you do from there. So just having that tradition of it's okay to not be perfect, but don't give up. Just keep moving forward and make sure that you can stay healthy and maintain a positive attitude and help the people that are around you, because everybody looks at each other for assistance at some point. And the better we can carry people forward, the better we're going to be as a society and as a profession.
I really, I think that work ethic is so important. I agree with you. And that's always something that I don't think it was even instilled in me, to be honest. I think it's just something that I grew up personally valuing is that work ethic. And for me, I think that preparation is everything. And people like to look at you from the outside perspective and say you got lucky or, wish that they had what you had. And then if you're like, well, do you? Like, because there's a lot of work and effort that went on behind the scenes to prepare me for XYZ, And so I think that there's so much value in that work ethic, and a lot of people don't see it. They see like the benefits of that or the outcome of that, but they don't see the hard work that goes into the preparation and the long hours and the education and all the things that you have to do to achieve the things that you do within your life or within your career. But I also agree with you that sometimes people are so afraid to fail. And for me, like, of course, failing doesn't feel good. I don't love it. Like, I've had many times where I've fallen on my face in like publicly, and that never feels great. But the rewards of being able to learn and to grow from those failures, I think far surpass maybe that sucky feeling of failure in the moment. And so now I don't shy away from failure as much as maybe I did before, as long as you can learn from it. And you, like you said, you can just keep going and don't give up.
Yeah, as long as don't be afraid to try. And I think we're also so much afraid of social embarrassment. A lot of anxiety comes from that, and no one's perfect. And do the best that you can and prepare the best that you can. And at some point, you're going to be successful. And I think that's where the hard work comes in, because some people get lucky, but most of the time it's preparation and perseverance.
Yeah, I agree. What is your secret sauce to marriage and keeping a healthy home life? Because that is, arguably one of the number one things that I hear through this podcast is the importance of work-life balance and having a healthy home life. What is the secret sauce? You've been with your wife now for a long time. You're both in law enforcement, so I would imagine that there's challenges, and there's also pros to that.
It, any relationship can be difficult at times, whether it's a professional relationship or your personal relationship. And I think with either one of those, communication, because if you're not communicating, you're not talking, then problems just tend to grow. And if you can't work that out through communication, it becomes worse. Being in this profession at a time where my wife and I were both working patrol, having rotating shifts, and being on opposite sides of the week, or the same side a week, but different times that we're working, that was probably the most difficult in our relationship, because we didn't see a lot of each other, and then trying to figure out who was going to take care of the kids and what time and how much sleep you're going to get. So just knowing that you can work and push through those hard times while you're preparing yourself for success in the future, and just knowing that whatever you're doing now is worth it for your relationship to make things better.
Communication is key, I think, for all walks of life, but it's so much easier said than done. And so I appreciate you saying that that's the key component is communicating and working together as a team to build that strong family unit. I think that for me, because I'm divorced, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to fail in a relationship, and I will tell you that that was the first thing that went. The communication breaks down, and then you're no longer a team and you're strangers, and you feel like there's no way to repair that. And I'm not saying that all marriages should stay together, but I will say, speaking from experience, I agree with you. I think communication is key, and when you start to lose that, it's really tough.
I agree with you. Most of us in public service or as first responders may have the unfortunate time to go through a divorce. I went through a divorce early on in my career as well. And part of that is I was so focused on my work that part of that personal relationship faltered because of my dedication to my profession, and the lack of communication and the lack of sleep, and then just having little ones at home and just taking things for granted and not valuing as much the communication and what's happening at home as opposed to what's happening at work. So as we mature and as we learn, as we grow, we learn how to understand yourself better and try to take care of yourself better, because you're really not going to persevere through life if you can't focus on yourself a little bit, and know that you have to have some self-reflection, and part of the problem is you, in
Mhm.
order to make others better.
I'm so happy you said that because I do think that that's hard for people to self-assess, and I think that it's also very good to have people in your life that can call you out and kind of keep you in check with those things. But I had that experience too. I think after my failed relationship, there's a lot of like resentment and different emotions going on, and you're kind of like mourning the loss of something that you didn't ever anticipate losing, right? And no one gets married thinking that they're going to get divorced. But I remember, because there were so many things that I was like pointing my finger at, and there came a time where I was like, wait, what was my role in this? Because perfection doesn't exist, right? And I think that you can strive for perfection. You can strive to be the best at anything that you do. But we are human, and there's always going to be growth opportunities, and there's always going to be flaws and things that we missed. And so I had that moment in my life where I was like, what role did I play? And how could I have done better? And how humbling is that to like take a moment and be like, ooh, like I was not perfect. And, sometimes I wish that we didn't have to go through the hard times to have that like introspection and to understand, but I almost feel like it's necessary. You almost have to go through those things to then be able to do better next time.
Very true. And that's where wellness comes in, recognizing some of the signs back then. I think I reflect on it now and like, wow, I could have done some things so much better and I could have taken care of myself so much better to where maybe the relationship wouldn't have been so terrible in my mind and terrible for my ex-wife as well. And even for my kids, because I had 4 children with my first wife and we ended up getting a divorce. So saving some of the pain and anxiety and the toughness that they went through during that time. Uh, you have to take responsibility for that at some point and then learn that to do things better the best that you can.
In the context of wellness and kind of just elaborating on that, aside from like home life stuff, how did this career impact you physically and mentally? I know that shift work is hard, the things that you see are hard. Was there anything that um, that you can share that impacted your physical and mental wellness?
That's such a deep question because there's so many facets of this profession that take a toll on your life, whether it's the cumulative stress over that long career where you think that one incident didn't affect me, but then years can go by and then something happens and then all of a sudden you reflect back on it and say, well, maybe that it did.
Yeah.
And your physical health, working those graveyards and not meal prepping or not eating the healthiest that you might be able to eat during that time and just relying on junk food or the caffeine to get you through the day and the mental side of it where we're seeing that now we're more open as a profession to knowing that it's okay to come forward to say that you're not okay and I need some help. I might need some therapy or some counseling because I'm struggling. And this profession is very difficult. Think about a normal person, whether it's true or not. I see it on the internet, like a normal average citizen will have maybe 80, or 4, 5, or 6, up to however many incidents that are critical in their lifetime. And then in first responders can be 800 to 1,000.
Yeah.
So over that time frame, dealing with death, abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence, you at some point break down. And if you're not prepared, if you don't recognize those signs in yourself, you're going to be in a long dark place for a while until someone can recognize that and help you, or you bring yourself out of it through the friendships that you develop over time, or somebody sees you walking down the hall and know that you're not okay. And I think at some point you have to reach that deep dark place and break down before you can crawl yourself out of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I went through that in my life too, where I was not making the best decisions. I was not making healthy decisions for myself. I was avoiding and escaping and numbing. And I agree that sometimes it does take you kind of reaching that like breaking point for you to then have that like aha moment. My hope is that we can be more proactive with wellness. And so it doesn't get to that point that there are those early indicators that you can notice within yourself or you can notice within each other that help you to maybe offload some of those things and address some of those things before it gets to that breaking point. What are maybe some of the signs, and this is a two-part question, but what are some of the signs that individuals can look for that may be a good indication of like, hey, maybe I do need to address this? And then what are maybe some of the signs or flags that you can look for within each other?
It's such an easy question, and it's so hard to see sometimes because we're all human. And
Mhm.
unless you really know somebody and know the little intricacies of each person and how they behave, sometimes it's not easier to see. But when you pull yourself out of it, you can reflect back and say, wow, I didn't even realize I was doing some of these things. And hopefully you don't mess up so badly that your career is affected by it. Because once you start mistreating the community because you're having a bad day at work, or you're short temper and you lash out at a community member, rather than having the self composure or self discipline to know that you're not okay, and to maybe take a minute before you or go out and start working traffic or whatever it is that you're doing out in the community, where you're supposed to be the role model and hold yourself to a higher standard. So short tempers, lack of sleep, where you can just see it in your face, where you're just not coping very well, poor diet that's leading to other issues. It's, walking around with your head down, or just knowing that you you're lashing out at your partners, you're lashing out at maybe your administration, you're having a difficult time just not being yourself, which, whatever that is, maybe you're not as happy, maybe you're joking, and your jokes really aren't funny. And it's a coping mechanism, because that's what we do as first responders, especially in law enforcement, is we mask some of the uncomfortableness by having some of those off-color jokes, or maybe misappropriate at times when you try to say something funny. So it's really difficult. It might just be individualized, depending on what that is and what it looks for. Where might be a little too aggressive on certain calls, not stepping over the line, but maybe you could have been a little more compassionate during an interaction. So it really just depends on the people that you work with and how well that they know you, and see if they can rein you in. And that's where developing relationships through wellness is going to carry you forward in a more positive light.
Yeah. And do you think that that is important, to get to know each other as much as you can so that you can identify if something is different or off? And I know that that's challenging. Everyone's busy, and depending on the size of the organization, it can be even more challenging. But do you think that that's important, to develop those relationships and really know each other?
I think it's absolutely important and critical. I know in larger agencies it's more difficult because there's so many people, but you still have small units within a large organization. So you can develop some of those relationships within those smaller units. For us, being a smaller agency, we really focus on those relationships and try to bring the family atmosphere into our department, so we can get to know each other and know that maybe you're struggling at home or your partner's having a hard time, and recognizing that you might need a little more attention when it comes to having an outlet for some of those stresses. So for us in Red Bluff, it's vital for our well-being and the well-being for our community, because if you can't take care of yourself or manage your own relationship or your behavior, then how are you going to be effective for the community? And I think that's why wellness is so important now, and the expectations of society on us. And I think a lot of that stems from just the pressure that we feel in law enforcement, when society looks at us to solve every problem that they have. And we can only train so much and be perfect in their eyes so much before we falter, and then that pressure just makes us crumble.
Yeah. You and I talked a little bit offline about culture, and I would love your philosophy, because one of the things that I am hesitant to say, especially as an outsider coming in, is saying you need to change your culture. And I think so often we hear that, right? Like, the culture needs to change. You need to change your culture. And we talked about this because I've argued this before, and I've said this on the podcast before, that there is a foundation to your culture that is admirable and good. And, you have the, trust, honor, integrity, like those things are amazing qualities to have within an organization, within an individual. And I don't think that that needs to change. But I think sometimes with the words that we use, it almost feels like we need to come in here and just like, cut it all and start from ground one. And so I would love your opinion on culture and how you've seen culture change, and, the integration of wellness into your culture.
You're right as far as the foundation of law enforcement and policing. It's that integrity, it's trust, and the honor that we feel when we put on the uniform. the difficult part is the outside influences. And for us is culture starts with the individual. It starts with you. You have to have those core values in order for culture to grow positively. It's when those values become in the gray area for culture, it starts with the individual. And if you don't have that core values and those value systems, and if it starts to get into the gray area where you're starting to forget some why you're here and why you chose that profession, then as a whole, your department and the profession will begin to suffer. And we pride ourselves on having trust, integrity, honor, and the leadership that comes within that organization. So when you have younger people or new people come into the organization, what's the culture? What are they coming into? And if you're not open and you can't communicate what your expectation is or what the standards are, we have policies and we have procedures for a reason. And if you can't meet those standards, then the culture will suffer. Or if you have an organization that doesn't maintain those standards, you see issues in organizations, not necessarily to the point where you're committing crimes or that you're mistreating the community, but internally you have some strife that ultimately can be resolved by maintaining standards and just treating people like people. Most of us want to come to work and know that our employer is going to take care of us and that our employer cares. And that's what we try to do here in Red Bluff is we know this job is difficult. Why should we make it more difficult on you as an administration? So we're really trying to bring the family atmosphere back into this profession and know that it's okay that you're struggling. It's okay that not everything's perfect, but we're going to take care of you. We're going to have the resources available to you so you can make good decisions and develop a culture knowing that each one of us is responsible for each other. And if we can take care of ourselves and take care of our teammates, we are going to absolutely take care of the community and treat the community fairly and provide the best quality service that we can for the community because they deserve it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think you're absolutely right. It's like, how can you as an organization make it known that like you actually care and value them? And I think everyone wants that. Like it's a human thing to want to feel valued, right? And to feel cared for. And to your point earlier, there might be some things that you cannot control, right? You can't control what kind of calls you're getting. You can't control outside pressure sometimes, but you can control what the culture is and what happens within the organization and trying to create a healthier space so that when you are within the walls of your organization, people feel like they can bring down those barriers. There's not added stress within the organization.
And part of that culture and changing it or developing it in a positive manner is not just saying that we have this type of culture, but it's in the behavior and how you treat each person within your department. So if we say that we're going to treat you well and provide you with resources, but we never do, then you're not going to have a positive culture, and you're going to see that really quickly because the words are meaningless. So providing that information to each employee, but then backing it up with the actions is vital to that culture. And as a whole, the police profession we know is very difficult, and there are a lot of positive cultures out there. And really, it's the minority where bad things happen, and it brings a bad light into law enforcement and the police profession because the majority and the vast majority are honorable, professional individuals. And it's the few that make those mistakes that catch those headlines that make us all look terrible. And that really isn't what the normal police profession is all about.
Yeah, and I can imagine that that's really deflating. Putting in the hard work and effort that you do, and then to have that be the perception because of the minority, not the majority. I am a huge action girl, and so I wrote that down when you were saying this because I have you heard this idea of like the cotton candy effect? Have you heard of this? So you can imagine like cotton candy, right? It like looks really good. It's like colorful and pretty. And then like you like eat it and it like just there's nothing there. There's no substance, right? And so like I it's almost one of my biggest pet peeves. I have a few peeves, but like one of my biggest pet peeves is when there's this unauthentic conversation and there's never action. And it's always been that way. I don't know if it's because of the way I grew up. Like my parents, I think maybe I shared this with you, but like my parents were both drug addicts and I grew up in a really toxic environment and they always would make all these promises. They always said that these things were going to happen and they never ever did. And so when I grew up, that was something that was very important to me in my relationships that I chose because I didn't choose to be in that family environment. You know, I was kind of just born there and had to deal with it. But when I became an adult and I had the ability to choose my circle, it was really important to me that actions and behaviors matched. And I've always been a stickler about this to the point where some people think I'm like maybe really tough and a little bit like no BS, like get out of here. I don't, but it's just because of how I was brought up. I think I was like, I really don't want people in my life who are going to say things, but they don't mean it and they're not actually gonna to do that with action. And so I agree with you. I think that there has to be action, there has to be more substance behind what we're saying. And I think that that can be, in the context of organizational wellness and leadership. And I also think that that can translate into our personal lives as well.
Yeah, we definitely have to show people that we mean what we say, and those actions are important because if you don't do those actions, then it's just a false narrative, really,
Yeah.
that you're trying to develop this family atmosphere and take care of your people. But then if you don't ever do it, or you don't have the resources or the processes set up to be able to do that, your culture is going to suffer for it.
Yeah, and I know that that's something that you guys have really focused on, and there are quite a few things that you're doing organizationally to support wellness. And there were a couple things that you had told me offline that I thought were really unique. So I was hoping that you could maybe share with our listeners some of the things that you've done organizationally.
Again, we're a small department, so resources are very limited for us. So really, it just comes down to treating each other with human kindness. It's not about fancy gadgets or the greatest, latest trend. It's more important for us to communicate as individuals and bring the family back into law enforcement. So we have, luncheons, we have those get-togethers, but we also invite the family members. We try to have quarterly barbecues or quarterly get-togethers where especially when the officers are working, we want to bring your family members in so we can share time with each other and get to know each other. Because a lot of times we'll go home and we'll say, this officer did that, or, dispatch did this, or records did that, but our family don't know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
So smaller agencies, it's easier, so you can have those get together so we can get to know one another. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is just bring the family atmosphere back into the organization. And specifically when we hire new employees, we're trying to get them into financial support, wellness, as far as emotional and physical support, because wellness just isn't about your mental health and your physical health. It's also and what we can do to set you up for success as a person and for you and your family. So we've partnered with our human resources and the other vendors that we have, and we at least do it yearly now, to where we bring all those vendors in and we have them accessible for the employees to be able to go through those different entities to try to make sure that they're on track financially, physically, and with your mental health as well. So just trying to look at it from a different perspective and try to bring everything into one place to make it more convenient for the employees to have access to those programs and those resources. Those are just a couple few things. Not that they're unique, but that's what we're doing for our people.
I think that it is unique in the sense that like I saw this on like LinkedIn or something and it was like if you're going to say that you're family, like are you actually acting that way? Or are you actually prioritizing that? And so I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was something like that. And, I think that sometimes we forget that the small things make a big difference. Sometimes it's like you said, bringing people together and having that family environment, having a cookout or, recognizing someone for the good work that they do or knowing their name or, making them feel like they're valued and bringing the families in so that the families feel like they're a part of it because they go through this career with you too, And so I think that to your point, of course, some things do cost money. And I know that funding is a challenge. But I think that because of that, through my conversations, a lot of the smaller organizations feel like they can't do anything because they're like, well, we're really small. We don't really have the resources. But to have someone say, hey, like, this is what we do, this is our focus, this is how we're prioritizing wellness. And we are small and funding is a challenge, but it's possible. And I think that's an important reminder that sometimes it's the small things that don't cost a lot of money that are going to make a big impact.
And one of the first ones that we did was just last week. We've been planning it for a while. So every department has an end of rotation because our shifts rotate, and then we go to either day shift or graveyard or whatever it is. And most shifts will go out and have their own party, or they'll have their own little get together to celebrate the end of that rotation. So we did it as a department this time. The whole department was rotating for patrol, even though some of our office staff have the same hours. We got with our unions and we just did it potluck style. Administration provided the main food, and then everybody brought in sides, and we did it for a 6 hour period for lunch and for dinner, bringing your families. And we administration adjusted our schedules, and we were all here together. And it was great to see families bring their children and let the children run around, and the stories that they're going to be able to tell, like, oh, I remember when I was a kid and I was running around the police department with all these other children that are now grown up. So trying to develop those memories and show that the police department really is a family, and it's okay for us to get together and have a good time, because just because you're in uniform doesn't mean that you're not human and you're not a person. You don't have those feelings or issues that every other person has.
I love that. My final question for you, and then I'll let you take the floor if we forgot anything. But one of the things that you had said to me that kind of stuck with me was, this reality that the job can change you over time. And my question is, what words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career in the context of wellness? Maybe something that you wish you would have known that would have helped you along the way, or something that you did that did help you along the way?
You can go a couple different directions with this, because you definitely can become callous in this profession because of the negativity that you deal with on a daily basis. The calls that you go on are the calls that people are having the greatest day of their lives. Most people are having the worst day of their lives, and that's every single day. So through time, it definitely can have an effect on your overall wellness. One of the things that I believe in, which probably has the most impact, is just stay active. Stay active in a positive manner. Get outside and get some sunshine, and whatever your hobby is, do that so you don't become so jaded in this profession. Because the better that you feel and the happier that you feel, you're going to eat better, you're going to treat people better, and you're going to have a longer career, because you're not focusing so much on the negative, but you're looking for the positive aspects in your life. Because if you surround yourself with negativity, or you have people in your life that are negative, you're probably not going to last very long in this profession or in life if you don't have something positive to look forward to. So keep moving. And there's a saying, whether you're a man or a woman, but don't let the old man in, or don't let the old lady in.
Mm,
Just stay active. Find something that's important to you and have it be positive in your life, and do something outside.
thank you. I appreciate your time so much. I do want to give you the floor if I missed anything, if there's anything else you want to add, but I really do appreciate you coming on here and sharing your words of wisdom.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I know that the company that you've developed and the wellness that you're trying to provide for first responders is extremely important in our profession. We've come to a time in our life where it's acceptable to know that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to reach out and ask for some help, even if you feel that it's just a small thing. Um, Prior in the profession, it was really something that you didn't talk about. You just had to deal with it, and most time you have to go home and you know take to alcohol or whatever it is that you try to do to forget some of those problems. So having people like yourself that are making this your business and your profession and offering that to first responders or military or whoever that have the high stress professions, it's extremely important for us to know that you exist and that you're available for us if we're willing to reach out. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much, and we'll definitely keep in touch, and maybe we'll do a part two at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you.